I did my final essay on Olaudah Equiano. He was a notable American literature writer from the 1700s. He was a slave that traveled through many areas, including Africa, to North America, to England, and back to North America. I found his piece of literature, The Interesting Narrative of Olaudah Equiano, to be an important piece of literature that should be included in all curriculums because it played a major role in showing not only the history of slavery, but also the history of America, and it showed a notable piece of work that was done from a writer who kind of went against all odds to create a book that is now a world-renowned book and was an international bestseller. His narrative went a lot on his journeys and was time-based. He went through being born in Africa, which is one of the parts of his narrative that is questionable because some say he was actually born in England, not in Africa, but his narrative is wrote in the way of being born in Africa, and at 11 years old being kidnapped and sold. That's where he began being sold as a slave with his sister. I found his piece of work to be interesting because he shows himself in many perspectives. Not only does he include the negatives of how he was treated at times and the bad environments he was in, but he also focuses on some of the positives of how he was treated and some of the kinder slave masters he had throughout his journey. He eventually was a freed slave when he had a master, Robert Smith, who made an agreement with him that if he were to come up with the money that he bought him for, that he would help him with being freed. Some of his quotes that I kind of found to be important in his writings were one from when he was on the boat coming from Africa to America. He stopped in Barbados initially and then America. He said, "When I looked around the ship too and saw a large furnace of copper boiling and multitude of black people of every description chained together, everyone for their countenances expressing dejection and sorrow, I no longer doubted my fate, and quite overpowered with horror and anguish, I fell motionless on the deck and fainted." And that, said a lot. He was fortunate in Africa to have nicer conditions, was well fed, had slave masters that somewhat respected him, and then he was put on this boat where he was packed pretty much like sardines with other African American slaves, and forced to travel months to Barbados. The part where it kind of hit with American history, I thought, was when they arrived to Barbados, part of North America. And he states, "What struck me first was what the houses were built with bricks and stories, in every other respect different from those I'd seen in Africa. Built, I was still more astonished on seeing people on horseback." So I felt like that kind of played into American history and how different it was, how shocked he was just to see people on horseback and just to see houses built with bricks. He then later makes it to Virginia, and I'm sorry, that's initially where they thought he was. They did not think he was born in England. They thought he was actually born in Virginia. And in Virginia, he was also, he had his positive experiences and negative experiences. At one point, he even met back up with his sister, but then was later separated again. I'd just like to reiterate that I thought his works were important to be included in the curriculum because of the importance that slavery plays in our history and the fact of just American history alone. And he highlights so much on it and so eloquently does it. You, in so many instances, can almost see yourself in his position and really understand the circumstances he was in. I enjoyed reading his readings, and he's a great writer. And like I said before, he kind of went against all odds to be able to write these books. I mean, slaves back then didn't even get taught how to read or write. So the fact that he was able to learn to read and write at such a high level was definitely something worth learning about. If anyone has any questions, feel free to comment and ask. I'd love to answer questions. I really enjoyed working on this, and I enjoyed all the readings we got to do in this class. I wish you all the best.